Let's welcome in the man who covers the Birds for ESPN.com. The great Tim McManus joins us on the Comcast Business Hotline. Hello, Timmy.
Hello, Mike. What's going on, man?
Well, we see that Devontae Smith sniffed back and not at practice in the cold weather, but A.J. Brown back, and the quarterback has cleared the protocol. So, two good newses and then one maybe iffy news. What light can you shed on the Devontae Smith situation?
Yeah, so what I was told is that he was dealing with back stiffness, and because it was cold and that kind of thing, they didn't want it to flare up in front of this game. So they anticipate him playing, Mike, but wanted to be, conservative in this practice just to make sure they don't worsen it. But they do expect Devontae Smith to play.
All right, so when we look at this team, he talked a couple days ago about the connectivity that this team has. And I actually thought he did a pretty good job trying to explain that thing. But you're around this team. Right now, what do you think their spirits are going into this playoff season?
I think that they're in a good place, honestly. And one of the telling quotes, I think, from the locker room yesterday was with Jordan Mailata. And the question was, what is different about this team compared to the one last year? And the first thing he said is that, the hunger is definitely greater with this one. He mentioned that there's some younger players that have helped inspire that. But the second part of that, he said that there's a collective chip on everybody's shoulder because of how last season finished. So really all year, I feel like they've been locked in. I mean, they don't want to have that same kind of taste. I think that the failure of last year has not been able to kind of rinse off very easily. And I think it's been a driving force for this team all year. At the same time, they've had a lighter feel about them overall. Like coming off of that Super Bowl loss, like it always felt a lot dimmer than really it should have. Even after wins, it was almost like if they were coming off of a loss. There's a better spirit to this team. They don't take themselves quite as seriously in that way. They enjoy their victories. And so it seems like they're in a determined quality mindset heading into the playoffs.
How much have you gotten a chance to see Jaylen Herz practice? And if so, what are you seeing?
So we don't get a ton. I mean, we're only out there for the first 5-10 minutes of practice. And so some of that is him just stretching, throwing a medicine ball around, doing drills where he's hurdling a pad and doing some throws that way, sometimes where he's rolling out. But, from what we've seen, I mean, it looks like normal Jaylen Hurts, where he's throwing with authority. The passes have been on point. He's been running around. And so there's nothing like if you didn't know he had a concussion and you're just watching him relative to other warm-up practices, you wouldn't see really any difference.
Now, I don't know how they're going to handle this game plan-wise, but if Tim McManus is advising Nick Sirianni and Kellen Moore, I'm looking at Green Bay. They're pretty good against the run, and I assume that they're going to plan that the Eagles are going to start off feeding Saquon Barkley right away. I think the ultimate curveball might be you go the other way. You get A.J. Brown involved quickly by throwing the ball against them. Their defensive numbers, Green Bay, are not as good on the road as home. So what do you expect this offensive game plan to look like early?
So if we go back to week one, Hertz was unsteady for sure. It was Lane Johnson called it the worst first quarter that they've had this year. And they've had a lot of bad first quarters. And that was Hertz dropping back, and he had some interceptions and some lost fumbles. And now he's coming off of a week where obviously he's had the layoff because of the concussion. But also he hasn't really been able to work with A.J. Brown. Now, Brown's back on the field today, but they haven't really had that opportunity to establish a connection. And now Devontae Smith is not practicing in this one, Mike. So it makes for kind of a weird situation in terms of, how fluid is the pass game going to be right out of the chute. I think that there's obviously going to be times throughout the course of this game where they're going to try to take advantage of what should be a very favorable matchup on the outside with their wide receivers against the Green Bay cornerbacks. But I don't think that's something that you go crazy with early. I mean, this whole season has been predicated, the turnaround was predicated on Saquon Barkley leaning into the offensive line, leaning into that ground game, and kind of doing the opposite of what they did to open the game in Sao Paulo, Brazil against the Packers week one. So, I think that they're going to want to get Saquon Barkley going, sort of get some easy passes for Herz, get him back in a rhythm with his receivers, and take off from there.
All right, so you play the hits and you ease into the game, and because everybody's worried. Jaylen Hurst hasn't played in a long time, and people that are worried say, well, he might be a little rusty.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a legitimate concern. He hasn't really played in games since December 22nd, and he didn't start practicing again until Wednesday. And this whole Brown stuff's a little funky. I saw him walking off the field on Wednesday after 5 minutes, Mike, with a staffer. And what I was told was that was part of the plan. But that's a weird plan. Why do you have your star receiver go out there for 5 minutes and then go back in and not practice the rest of the day? And then the day after that, he's not even on the field. So obviously they're managing something with that knee. And even though there have been tons of reps between Jaylen Herz and A.J. Brown dating back several seasons now, is he just going to be in that flow instantaneously, given that he is coming off a concussion, hasn't played in the game in several weeks, hasn't been able to work with his wide receivers? And so at some point, obviously, you're going to have to unleash it through the air. But, yeah, I think I would play the hits early.
Tim, most of the people we've spoken to seem pretty confident that the Eagles win this game. But I have seen some concerned, if you're an Eagles fan, and some Packers fans hopeful that maybe this plays out like the wild card game did last year against Dallas, where no one really gave the Packers a chance, and they go into the Dallas stadium and dominate. Jordan Love throws for over 270, 3 touchdowns, and they pretty much blow him out of the building. Why is that not going to happen at Lincoln Financial Field on Sunday?
Well, the Eagles are the better team by a pretty wide margin if you're looking for straight talent. And they just haven't really shown too many signs of vulnerability throughout the course of the year. So I think, generally speaking, fans should walk into the playoffs and this game in particular confident, even though there are a couple hesitations out there given the recent pop-up of wide receiver injuries and that kind of thing, and Hertz having to lay off. But, that being said, I don't think this is the best matchup for Philadelphia. For an example, defensively, Green Bay has a pretty stout defense. And one thing that they major in is zone coverage. Whereas ideally, if you're drawing up an opponent for the Eagles, you're drawing up a team that relies more on their man coverage, because that creates one-on-ones for A.J. Brown, and it turns the defenders' backs to Jaylen Hurts that allows him to run. And they're not going to get a whole lot of that. They have some confusing looks with the variations of cover 2 that they use that can manipulate quarterbacks into throws that they shouldn't be making. And then on the other side of the ball, with Josh Jacobs in the ground game, if there is an area of vulnerability for this defense, it's against the run. And when Vic Fangio was asked this week, what do you think about your state of the ground game? He was like, that's a good question. We've had some really good games, and we've had some really not so good games, and some that landed in the middle. Clearly it's on his mind and is going to be one of the major factors in this game. So, the Packers come in with all of that, and then obviously a quarterback in Jordan Love, who's very capable of getting hot. He's streaky, so it could go the other way, and the Eagles could roll. But he is capable of those tight window throws, making some magic happen. And so it's a dangerous team. It's not one that obviously the Eagles are going to be taken lightly. And if they're clicking on all cylinders, I think it could be a heavyweight fight.
Talking to Tim McManus, covers Eagles for ESPN.com. Tim, have you had a chance to see Jake Elliott kick practice-wise in this cold weather?
So yeah, I've been watching him a little bit, Mike, and really my eyes have been trained on him for the past several weeks. And so basically it's the same kind of stuff. Now, the last few weeks the last few days, I should say, there's swirling winds, it's colder, so it's making the conditions tougher. Generally speaking, what we've seen out of Elliott over the course of the last handful of weeks is within 50 yards during practice, he's been fine. He's been on point. Kicks have been going through. It's really when you get past 50 yards where it just becomes a high wire act where you don't know what you're going to get. And that includes on the practice field and also during warm-ups pregame. So that obviously plays out with the numbers statistically, where he's only made one kick from 50 yards all season long. And so that changes sort of the game plan here a little bit, where you can't rely fully on Elliott making those longer kicks. And so that's going to have to alter Sirianni's thinking when it comes to, all right, now it's 4th down and they're on the it's the 42-yard line or whatever it is, I think that you're going to have the green light to go for it a little bit more because of the inconsistency that we've seen out of Elliott.
Which leads me to my next scenario, which we discussed a little earlier. It's just a hypothetical scenario, and I want to run it by you. It's late in the game. There's 1:38 left. The Eagles are at the 35-yard line, 4th and 3 in a tie game. Are you sending him out to kick the 52-yarder? Or are you going to try to convert that first down?
Oh, man. Now I know why it's no fun being in Sirianni's shoes. That's not a great
Because you're going. If he misses it, you're giving them the ball back to win the game, where they have to go maybe 35 yards.
I think I would put Elliott out there. I think I would put for a 52-yarder.
Yes.
I think I'd put him out there. I think I would put him out there. If it got past, especially watching him as much as I have, during warm-ups, once it gets to 54 yards, it's I don't trust it. 52, I would be a little bit out of my comfort zone, but I think I would send him out there.
So 52 is the max.
That, in my mind, that's the max. I don't know where their line is, and of course it depends on that day and how much the wind is swirling and that kind of stuff. But yeah, for me, that's about the end of my comfort level with Elliott.
All right, sounds good. Let's get your prediction. I think you think the Eagles are going to win this game. I don't know if you think they're going to cover. What do you got?
I think so. I'm going to go 27-24 Eagles.
27-24, not a cover.
Oh, yeah, it's a cover, right?
No. 5-point line, brother.
Oh, it's a 5-point line. That's right.
It's going up to 5.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, it started 3.5 and moved to 5. Excuse me. So, yeah, not a cover. I'm picking a field goal win for the Eagles. I can see a scenario where maybe Herz in the offense looks a little sluggish to start out. Fans get nervous. The Packers jump up to a lead, but then they settle in. Saquon Barkley takes over the game. Herz finds his rhythm, and the Eagles escape to move on to the divisional round.
All righty. Sounds good. Timmy, always a pleasure. We'll talk to you.
All right, guys. See ya.
Tim McManus covering the Eagles for ESPN.com. So he's got the Eagles with a field goal win, but he's like you. He would try to kick that field goal to.
Hey, everybody, it's Bill Colarulo. Thanks for watching. We appreciate it. Make sure you like and subscribe to our channel so you can engage during the show, and you're not going to want to miss all the content that we post. It's not only the live videos. It's videos after the fact. It's our shorts. It's all the content you want as a Philadelphia sports fan. Looking forward to connecting.